Hello, audience. You're listening to the Breadcrumbs to Passion podcast, where we give you the breadcrumbs to your passion by inspiring you with deeper and connected conversations for you to have fun and live wholeheartedly.
Hi, I'm Amanda Giebel.
And I'm Jason French, your host of the Breadcrumbs to Passion podcast.
Welcome, listeners, to episode 11, Holding Patterns.
It's great to have you this week, Amanda, on this particular subject around holding patterns. I know we've just been having a great conversation around this, as we always do each week, on holding patterns, because we've had obviously different experiences, our own personal experiences, but also with the clients that we've been working with, how they feel that sometimes that there's this door closing on how they did life, and there's a new one opening. But it seems like there's this resistance point. Would that be true?
Yeah, a whole lot of confusion.
Yeah, a whole lot of confusion.
I think you come back and start questioning things like, where is this taking me? What am I doing? Am I on the right path? What's happening? Why is everything changing? And it keeps you stuck, keeps you in a holding pattern.
Yeah, and holding patterns are very, very much like that. It's like there's this void and you're trying to fill this void that actually has no kind of structure to it. It has nothing to it. It's simply this place of unknown. It's like, have I wasted all these previous years on where I was to get to this point of just nothingness? And the holding pattern is like, really at the end of the day, it's stopping of a reoccurring theme in our life. So if you think of a pattern, it's a reoccurring theme. And if you think of holding that, it's like stopping that pattern from reoccurring. So when we get into that place of, okay, why is it at the moment we feel like we're in a holding pattern? It's because there's something that obviously needs to change. This pattern has been brought up for us to observe. Like it's really powerful when we take that opportunity to do that.
I just thought just then, it's like this gray cloud. So we're sitting in the gray cloud before we can actually leap out and change that pattern into something that we're meant to be doing, and then the answers will start coming again. But when you're in the holding pattern, it feels like you're engulfed in this cloud, this gray cloud, and it makes it very hard to see outside of that or on the other side of that. Because
absolutely,
it's a big mass of gray cloud around you.
Yeah. So when you think about that, like when you look into that a little bit further with that holding pattern, like you said, you're in that cloud. What do you think is that resistance point? What do you think is actually stopping you from seeing the other side?
Well, you get so used to doing the same pattern. And then I guess when things come up where it's like, all these answers, you have to change the way you're doing things, because otherwise it wouldn't come up, would it? If we were to continue on and everything seems fine, that's okay. But when we're stuck in this gray matter and not knowing which way to jump, pretty much, it's that we not seeing the light seeing that gray cloud is a definite sign of things needing to change, or that things are changing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So what I see it as is that very much it's that place of indecision is what you're saying. It's like you're indecisive of the direction you want to take. And when you're in that place of indecision, it's kind of like you're in this fear of missing out, or this fear of not belonging or not being accepted. And I was just sharing with you before, I was recently been reading a book, The Alchemist, and I don't know if anyone's read it, but it's about chasing your personal legend. And when I first got that book, I was sharing with you before that it was that journey of I was in that holding pattern. I was sitting. I didn't want to do what I'd previously had done, and I was wanting to seek something more out of my life. And through that process, what it actually came down to was sitting in that void. And that void was when I was given this book, but I wouldn't read it because I wasn't open to the learning at that point in time. Yeah. And I love this because I've heard so many speakers say this, that it takes 50 different times for you to really get the message. So we could say this, someone else could say this, someone else could say this, but it will take 50 times before the penny drops. Now, when I hear about the penny dropping, all I can think of is when it gets out of your head and into your heart. You know, when that actually sinks in and goes, you know what, this is what it is. Now, that holding pattern is really coming between your head and your heart, allowing that, like you were saying, that grey cloud to come down into your heart space and go, yes, this is for me. Now, when it hits that spot in that heart, there's nothing that can actually stop you. It's like you're prepared to sacrifice whatever it is, you know, to actually follow your personal legend. And I think it's really, really powerful when we like really jump into that grey cloud, that void of that nothingness. And sometimes it may be just stillness, that we sit with that and we allow ourselves to allow whatever it is. I say clarity to come through, or else it may be like a download that comes through to you of what that looks like, gives you a vision, or gives you a direction. It may be a whisper. You know, when I broke my ankle, I got a message in a whisper that said, stop and listen. And I was like, who's that? No, I've never been on drugs. So it was just, it's because your mind is silenced. You're actually open to the messages. Now, I have heard this for like years of my growth. Like I'd heard those, especially on Oprah Winfrey shows, when they say, when you get that whisper, or when you get that sign, or when you get this. And I was like, where's my sign? Where's my whisper? But the head chatter was always there, and it wasn't giving me the sign, or because I wasn't open to it. So that's why the holding pattern, which is what I see the humanity as a collective are currently in, they're in a holding pattern. They're like, we've had this old way of our liberties being taken from us. We've had all this control and manipulation, coercion, all this sort of stuff. And that's where, and people are now in this holding pattern of going, okay, so what does that mean now? Like, what does that mean for my life now? Am I supposed to be submissive? Am I supposed to, what is it that I'm supposed to do? Am I supposed to fight for my freedom? Am I supposed to do this? Am I supposed to do that? And then it gets overwhelming because everything is outside of them.
Yeah.
You got to come back to you.
Yeah, no direction outside, is there? Technically.
Technically, they're looking for leaders.
The inner map is on the inside.
That's exactly right. The inner map is on the inside. So how often do you visit the inside?
I try to do it regularly. But sometimes we get caught in this grey matter.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, you know, it collectively it is what's going on around us, and what I guess talking to other people as well. Because everyone's got their own opinion, so it can be very hard to come back to that inside map when there's so many different opinions, there's so much chaos going on around you that you're like, that's the holding pattern as well. Because again, you're in that fear of, well, am I doing the right thing? Am I jumping the right way? Like, what's all this mean?
Yeah, is it an illusion, basically?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that this is actually another powerful thing, because I know this actually came from one of the things that you had talked about earlier last week was around relationship side of things as well, where people aren't prepared to move on. They're wanting to repeat the same pattern, you know, go back to the old ways. They can't surrender if a relationship has ended, or whether it's a new one starting. They're in that holding pattern. They're holding basically each other hostage of who's going to make the move, who's actually going to make the call.
Yeah.
You know, like who's going to call it out, because that's actually that resistance point. And that comes down to that indecisiveness and that willingness to know what it is that you actually want. So a lot of people stay in that place of knowing because of the fact, and whether it's, you know, keeps them small, minimized, all that sort of stuff in comfortable, safe environment, even though they build resentment, they get misery, they have anger, all that sort of stuff. When they're in that place, it still feels comfortable. They know how to navigate that.
Yeah.
So it gives them some kind of significance. But stepping into something new where it's actually out of their control, they haven't walked that path before, it's kind of like, ooh, to me, I get excited because it's like curiosity. It's adventure.
Yeah.
It's unknown. It's like trusting something greater than yourself, like to go, Why the hell am I here? There's a reason.
Yeah.
I don't know
But
now, but it will happen, you know?
yeah, and going back to what you said earlier, like everyone is kind of in that place now because now we are in the new world. So much has happened. Like we can't even, get outside of our country to experience other places. Like, it feels like we're so stuck. It feels there's a lot of people losing jobs and, all this change that's happened. People are just everyone's feeling it. Everyone's kind of like, what is actually to come?
Mm. So that all comes back to where a lot of people are waiting for something outside of them to change. That comes back to us. So the power is within us. The power is in how we show up in our everyday personal and professional lives. And that is not for somebody else's approval. It's actually for our own. So what is it that we really want to show up in is what the holding pattern gives us that opportunity, because it allows us to dig deep into that heart space to go, actually, you know what, if that didn't work for me previously, what is it that I truly want for me? What is it that I'm really seeking? What is it that I really want? Where is it that I really want to go? What is it that I really want to explore? What's the adventure I want to take? If I had no barriers, where would I be?
Yeah. Yeah. All good questions.
Yeah.
Exactly. Love it. That's, yeah. And I think anyone that is feeling that gray matter or that holding pattern, that we come back and we ask ourselves those questions. Like that was pretty powerful. Like that was really cool. So maybe we can put that up afterwards as criteria to ask for being in this holding pattern.
Yeah, definitely. Um, the thing people that struggle in holding patterns are usually the people that avoid. They're in avoidance. The other one is they're impatient, and the other one is they're usually runners. So they're running from themselves. They're running from themselves. They're
Are
really.
you talking to me?
I don't know. I'm just like, it's what came out when I looked at holding patterns. Because I mean, I've been there as well. Like,
Yeah.
years ago, I was thinking that I was doing everything, for me, but really what I was doing was to fit into an external world that didn't really give a crap whether I had food on my table or whether I had shoes on my feet. At the end of the day, all they were worried about is their experience, like with me. And when I had nothing to give, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, whether it was finances, emotional connection, as in supporting them in their shit, it basically came back down to, well, that's just me, like avoiding my own self, like, so going on that journey of being able to step in and letting that all go, and sacrificing what I thought was a sacrifice actually wasn't. It was the greatest gift that I could give myself. That was the freedom, and the freedom to be myself without the expectations or the responsibility of others. It was just basically go and find you. And when you find you, you will. It wasn't even a case that I felt like I was lost either. It was more the fact that I knew there was something deeper that I wasn't accessing. And
Yeah,
so
it's
I had,
that whisper, the whispers
yeah,
that come. Like,
absolutely. So I think that when you look at the holding pattern, it may feel like it may go on for 12 months, it may go on for a few weeks, it may go on for 2 years. Like over the last couple of years, people feel like they've been in a holding pattern, But I challenge everyone to like go into you and inside of you, and like you said, find that map that allows you to put that out of what that is that you're actually looking for or seeking in your world right now.
yeah, I think so important for all of us. Like, there's no one higher up or lower down than any of us. We can all ask these questions weekly, daily. I think it's a good way of keeping us on track and moving forward rather than being in that holding pattern where we're feeling stuck and not worthy, not confident, not feeling ourselves. I guess all these things that keep coming up. To ask these questions and go, actually, this is what I want. This is the direction I want to go. This is the best for me, and really stepping in and knowing that.
I agree. I think that when do you find that people realize they're in a when do you think they realize they're in a holding pattern?
That I the change in the way you think. I guess, if you find that thoughts come up that don't usually come up, so these little niggling thoughts that are actually questioning you, so that leads you to not feeling that confident,
Mm.
or not feeling that happiness that you usually feel. Like, so when things start to change and you notice, like, that's a little bit different, and then it continues and you're like, why? Trying to understand the why. Like, why is this actually going on? Like, what can I do to fix this? Roadmap.
I think that's actually, yeah, you know what? I think that's actually the biggest mistake a lot of people make is they try to fix something that no longer exists.
Yeah.
And they see that it's broken, and it's not necessarily broken. It's if it does break or it's finished with, it's happened for a reason. And that's, I think that was the biggest challenge I ever faced. Like today, it's not so hard for me because I've been through it.
Yeah.
And what I realized is the block between what it is that you desire and what it is that you're experiencing. Like, for instance, like how, just say, I'll use myself as an example here. So how I perceive something to be now is usually like there's a fear between that and what's on the other side. And so when I look at what is that internal experience, what is that internal story I'm telling myself, that creates this fear that takes away from where it is I'm going. And when I come back to look at that story, it's really powerful because that fear is no longer what it used to be. So that fear is actually not there, because what it is, it's not necessarily that I'm afraid of it. It's more the fact of stepping in to claim what it is that I wish to desire. And that usually comes when you're chasing your personal legend, as I like to call it. And what that usually comes down to is that guilt for getting what it is that was always yours.
Yeah.
And everyone's individual. Everyone has a different way of chasing that as such. Not that you need to chase it either.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know if that's right. The
It
right way.
seems like it feels like you're chasing it, but it's actually not what's happening.
Yeah, it's like following that guidance,
The breadcrumbs.
following those breadcrumbs. Yeah, like, and everyone has those moments where it's like, no one is perfect. Like, we're all going to have days or weeks or months or even years of this holding pattern. And they keep coming up regularly because it's making it's funny. I just had another thought, but it's making us balance out, what it is or what we're here to do and how we're here to show up. But also, we've just had the new moon in Libra, so that's why I was just like the balancing out of the scales. And that's the process that we're going through also. But we've also had lots of retrogrades, which means a lot of change, and a lot of stuff is just
Accelerating
craziness, unanswerable stuff at this very minute, because we're in the holding pattern and there's something better to come.
Yeah, so if it is feeling like you have to let go of something or you have to move through to something new, allow yourself, give yourself that permission. Because at the end of the day, it's either you're prepared to change it together, like whether it's a relationship or not, you're either prepared to go through it together, or else it's like you have to go and do how you would normally do it. Do you know what I mean? And that's the way that people do stuff. Like it's mining, like it's painting for your gold as you go.
The answers and the people and the places and the situations all come up at the right time. Yeah. So, you said before about that book. You got given that book 3 years ago, but it wasn't until recently that you actually were drawn to read this book. So it's taken 3 years of you to grow, to learn, to find a new direction, to get heart-centered enough to be able to
be open to the lesson.
be open to the lesson and accelerate that learning, because now, we get to that stage where it is accelerated because you're at that level where you understand it.
Yeah.
Whereas 3 years ago, you read a couple of pages and you couldn't get into it because you weren't at that level to have that learning. You weren't at that level to accelerate. But now that you've actually got there,
yeah, because I was actually in that resistance to what it had to say, because if what I've read now, I would have like gone into freak mode of going, oh my God, like shit, is this going to happen? And and where I'm a feeler, so I have to explore, and then I will read the visual and go, that all makes sense for me now. Where visuals normally go the other way, they have to actually see it before they feel it. So these are the things that I think at the exploration side. So some people would like to get the book and then they experience it. Whatever that is for you, like if it's auditory, it might be us hearing it on a podcast, or
hearing it on Breadcrumbs to Patrick
or audio book or something, so yeah. But anyway, as always, just to round up today's session, what do you think is your takeaway for this particular session on holding patterns?
Yeah, well, I think we said that right at the start. We said, nothing on the outside is going to give us those answers. So the roadmap to the inside is coming from, that heart-centered space. And actually, do you want to say how that something came up with you with the lettuce? Do you want to? Because I think that.
Oh yeah, I was really powerful. Yeah, it's powerful. So in summing that up, this week I had an awesome moment as I was finishing up this book, The Alchemist, and my mum had said to me, if you wanted anything for lunch, to get the lettuce out of the garden, but she said make sure you keep the heart in the soil, and whatever is underneath, cut that off and use that. And I was like, wow, it's really profound. And she looked at me like I was crazy. And I said, well, at the end of the day, I said, keep the heart in the soil, and whatever manifests, make sure you cut that off and eat, or like let it go, whatever it is. But always keep your heart in the soil. That helps you grow and evolve and creates whatever it is that you can harvest. I think that's a really, really powerful thing. So in that holding pattern, that could be all it is really digging deep into that soil right now of your heart space and really finding out what the truth is for you and where it is that you want to go.
Yeah, so you can flourish and, and take over the world with new ways of doing things, rather than not keeping you in that holding pattern of doing the old way.
Absolutely. As always, be brave and be the change.
Get into that heart-centered space.
Awesome. You take care. See you next week.
Bye.
The information contained in this presentation is of a general nature and based on presenters' personal experiences. It does not constitute specific advice. Always seek individual expert opinion to help with your specific needs and situation.